Thanks to Sana Skin Studio for supporting the No podcast. Sana is a skin studio that is shifting the relationship with your skin and your products through goal-driven facials, real guidance, and clean skincare. Stay tuned for our promo code so you can receive $25 off of your first facial at Sana Skin Studio. Welcome to the No podcast with me, Nikki Spo.
What is up, fam? You are listening to The No, where it is not about knowing everything, but about coming to know ourselves. I am your hostess, Nikki Spo, and I am excited to share today's conversation with dating coach Evan Marc Katz with all of you. Before we get into it, here's your call to subscribe to the show, whether you're listening in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or watching on YouTube, wherever you're accessing this from. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Follow me on Instagram at NikkiSapSpo and The No with Nikki Spo for updates. And if you're loving the content, go ahead and leave me a 5-star rating and a review. It means a lot. All right, so Evan Marc Katz became the world's first dating coach in 2003, specializing in helping smart, successful women create lasting love. He is the author of 4 books. His Love You podcast has over 2 million downloads, and he has been featured in hundreds of media outlets, including Today, The New York Times, and The Wall Street Journal. It seems like an unlikely career for a man, much less a man who was once called a serial dater by CNN. Yet that's what makes Katz so unique. By helping women understand men, what they think, how they act, and what they want, he encourages them to raise the bar on what to expect from men and never again settle for a dissatisfying relationship. Evan's coaching philosophy is based on the belief that successful relationships require a combination of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and practical skills. He teaches his clients to communicate effectively, set healthy boundaries, and navigate the ups and downs of dating with confidence. Known for his honesty and directness, Evan is not afraid to challenge his clients and push them out of their comfort zones, but he always does so in a supportive and non-judgmental way. His goal is to help women break free from limiting beliefs and behaviors that are holding them back and to empower them to create the love life that they desire. Now happily married for 15 years, Evan believes that you can find love no matter where you live, no matter how old you are, or how challenging your previous relationships were. And he has the results to prove it. Over 13,000 women have graduated from Love You, Evan's coaching program and community for women who are tired of being alone, exhausted by dating, and ready for a truly equal partner. By providing hands-on support, structure, and accountability, Evan teaches women to become the CEOs of their love lives and attract high-value, commitment-oriented partners. If you're an intelligent, successful woman who feels like you have everything except for love, Evan offers a step-by-step action plan to finally get the life of your dreams. He lives in LA with his wife and kids, and I am so excited to pick his brain today. So let's get going with Evan Marc Katz. Evan Marc Katz, thanks for taking the time to be on The No today. I'm really excited to chat, and I gotta say that I'm intrigued and a little perplexed, but I'm generally very, very open-minded and mostly very, very excited to hearing what you're all about and what you do. Obviously, your track record speaks for itself. So I'm going to ask you first a question that I asked myself months and honestly, probably years before I even started this show is what gives you the right to talk about what you talk about?
First time I was asked that question, I was 31 and I was on CNN and I'd written a book about online dating, and Kira Phillips said, "Who the hell are you to give anybody dating advice when you've never had a relationship for more than 6 months?" And I kind of froze on screen for a half a second. And then I realized at the time, my job wasn't to tell anybody how to get married. I hadn't figured that part out. My job was to tell people how to master online dating. That was what gave me power at that time. Online dating was a new medium. I've been coaching for 20 years and I've been married for the last 15. I got to think I've learned something along the way that may have value to you, because in talking to thousands of women about their predicaments, you get to see patterns and then you can help people overcome them. And it's no different than anybody doing their job at home. If you've been doing your job for 20 years, I'll bet you probably have an expertise in it.
Coaching is a big thing, right? People are moving, I think a lot of people are reaching out to get therapy. And I think that mental health care is a lot more normalized than it once was. And I think that therapists absolutely serve a purpose. I have a therapist. I advocate for, I think everybody should have a therapist. But I do think that there's a key difference between having a therapist and having a coach in any given like scenario of your life or any pocket of your life, whether that's your business coach or your relationship coach or whatever it is. So can you tap into and explain to our listeners for a little bit, like what the difference is between like having a therapist and why somebody should be investing in a coach? Because I think I also hear a lot, what qualifies them, right? It's like the question that I even asked you, like what gives you the right to talk about this? Like, why should people be even investing in a coach?
I can't be too high and mighty about being a coach in as much as this is a job that I made up 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm the OG. Like I'm the first guy to do this 20 years ago. Now there's, any 22-year-old influencer could go on and give dating advice. We all give dating advice to our friends. The question is, are you giving good advice? Are the people working with you getting results? Are people paying for your advice, or are you just a talking head? And so people turn to coaches because something's not working in their life, and all the therapy in the world, which is mostly backward looking. Who messed me up? How did my parents raise me? My dad left me. My mom criticized me. And now you're stuck. So you know how you got here, but you don't know where you're going next. Coaches help in the present in creating a bright new future. So if someone's done a lot of self-help, but their life hasn't changed, you might consider a coach.
I love that you talk about this because I think it's really important. I think that people are really quick to want to discredit like the coaching industry. And and it's just in me like working a program of recovery. I'm like, I listen to advice from anonymous individuals who have like overcome their addiction struggles that are sharing their story. And I'm just like, oh shit, like there's my story and all these other people's stories. Like it's all the same story. And I'm like, just the power of community and like the shared experience and listening to people that like, they have no qualifications except life experience. Those are coaches in my world. So I really appreciate you talking about that and just differentiating the backwards looking method of psychology and therapy versus the in-present, future looking, like applicable action steps to having a coach.
The kind of questions I get are different than the kind of questions that therapists are qualified to answer. And I have, again, enough humility to know there are things that are out of my depth. My job is to say, okay, you're on Bumble. There's 2 billion guys. How do you even begin to find the needle in the haystack? How do you go from email to a phone call to a first date? How do you date multiple men at the same time? How do you know when to give a guy a second date? We really get into the minutia of that, which is the most confusing part of early phase dating, for example.
So, you said something while we were off record about how like women are really focused on like finding that like top tier 1% guy and how they're looking for that, like that really wealthy investment banker or like somebody who checks all the boxes on the outside and how problematic that can be for dating. So let's tap into that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you're a walking testament to that. And you probably, you know, even a lot more than you're letting on. I feel like there's sometimes some fool's gold when you say, hey, I'm going to be Icarus. I'm going to fly really close to the sun. And then you realize it's not always all it's cracked up to be. So my perception as a dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, high-achieving women who have educations, who have their own money, and they're looking for the guy who's better, taller, smarter, richer, everything, or I won't respect him, I won't be satisfied, I'll feel like I've settled. And that's a story that you tell yourself. I'm not denying that there's something attractive about it, and you're never going to negotiate with people about what they find attractive.
Sure.
The problem is this. If you restrict yourself to 0.01% of men, well, there's not many of them. So we have a really small dating pool. Who can men date? How do men date? She's pretty and she's nice. And nice is optional. So you'll have a whole bunch of guys who could date literally everybody in the land. And women are like, I could only start with the 0.01% or it's off the table. Okay, so women are going to have a harder time just numerically to start. Now within that small subset, what do you find? There's a percentage of those men who don't want you. He wants a easygoing first grade teacher to just stay at home and raise his kids and not speak up and make him dinner every night. And there's a percentage of those guys who don't want an equal. They want a servant. And so that lops off another percentage of guys.
Right.
And then as a smart, strong, successful, opinionated woman who's on the go, you have a partner who's also that way. And now what do we discover? There's friction.
Oh, wow.
Right? We have two people who are strong, speak their mind, conflict. And now we have a relationship where there's a lot of tension. It doesn't fit very well. The relationship you have, the relationship itself is weak. It's a roller coaster. You're consciously anxious, right? Where I don't want to give away the punchline of why I'm here today, but my belief is that good relationships are easy. And so if you are in this miracle world where you got yourself a billionaire and everything's easy, you win. I don't know anyone who's pulled it off. I don't think it exists. So
why?
Because these guys are so dedicated to their mission, their purpose, and it's so intertwined with their ego, this need to create, to win. They don't have enough to give at home. And when I work with clients and I talk to them on the phone before I enroll them in my Love You course, I interview them. I say, hey, 3 years from now, your work with me was successful. What's the end point? Tell me about one Saturday in your life 3 years from now and what your life looks like. And I write it all down on a little Post-it note. And at the end of the call, I read it back to her. You know what every single person tells me? We wake up late on Saturday morning. He makes me a cup of coffee. We talk about our week. We make love, walk the dogs on the beach, meet some friends for brunch, have some mimosas, couple hours, maybe get ready for dinner party. We'll have a few couples over for dinner. Maybe the kids will come by, right? Clear out 11, 12 o'clock, make love again, fall asleep in each other's arms. Everybody says some version of that. And someone else's shopping is someone else's golf is someone else's hiking. But that's not the point. It's very much about togetherness and a feeling of ease and comfort and trust that when you're with a guy who's traveling 300 days a year, how much of that can you possibly get?
Don't go making me cry now. You know, like I think I hear that. You know, it's funny. You said you held up, for those who are just listening and not watching on YouTube, like you held up a Post-it and you're like demonstrating how you make this list for people, and like the majority of your clients are all saying the same exact thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm listening to you. I'm like, that just sounds so nice.
Again, I don't coerce it. I just say, hey, typical Saturday, 3 years from now,
yeah, man,
describe it to me from scratch. Don't leave out any detail.
Sure.
Everybody lands in the same place. It's always about this very simple togetherness that when we have big careers, it pulls us away from it, which doesn't mean you should give up your big career or you shouldn't find a guy who's got any ambition. People think, oh, he's asking us to go to the opposite direction. I've taken care of some loser slacker guy. I'm never doing that again. Who said anything about that? Right? There's plenty of guys, and we talked about this briefly, who are just normal upper middle class guys who have college educations and make six figures and save for the future and lead nice lives. And if you are blessed with having more money than him, congratulations, you just got $100,000 raise by dating him.
I mentioned this to you earlier, is like I've gotten recently like an influx of messaging on my Instagram about how like, oh, you fumbled the bag, you know, and whatever. And I'm thinking like, man, there's like this standard for women that like, if you are with somebody who is successful, you're in it for the money. And if you are not, then you must, like, it's every woman, like you must have this dream to date a total loser. You're either set up to like be like, I need to date the top 1% of men, or like be judged and be like, okay, well, my dream in life should be to date a total dud. You know, and I think that there's something to be said about like the middle of the road. Like, where's the middle? Like, and then to your point about like women needing to expand their horizons a bit, about being like, okay, well, the dating pool is actually much larger than I anticipated, and that my priorities might not be in the exact space like for a life that is fulfilling to me.
And so what did coaches do? We get this out of the intellectual and we actually start to feel it. When you said almost made you cry, that was a feeling. That was a longing. Like, that seems so simple. Why is that so hard? It's not built in. And for my wife and I, that's our life. Like, that's the life that we chose.
Yeah.
And so are there other people out there who want that, who can create that? Absolutely. But people tend towards black and white thinking. If you're not with this, if I say, hey, chemistry, while it feels really great, is not the most important part of a relationship. Someone will be like, oh, so I should just be with like some guy that I can't even stomach kissing? Nope, never said that. Is he taking money out of your pocket? No, if he's taking care of himself, he doesn't have to take care of you. And if your goal is to be taken care of, well, then fine, admit it. Realize the percentage of men who make enough to take care of you at that level, A, is really small, and B, to make that much money means he's probably going to be putting work first over you.
So I've had this conversation with a lot of girlfriends, and I've had this conversation like during my marriage, after my marriage, before my marriage, like just like growing up in life, like friends of mine who are just like, okay, I just got out of a relationship or I've just been divorced, and like I'm looking for a guy who has to be this, that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, get rid of the checklist for a minute. I remember like one of the big things, like for friends in my age group, was like women who haven't had children yet were like, oh, well, I don't want a guy who has had kids. Like, I want that to be the first, like, I want to have that first experience. And I'm not someone to judge and say that they shouldn't want that. Like, I understand like the allure and like how sweet and whatever that can be. But I remember thinking, like, what if you meet a guy who treats you like a fucking goddess and like loves you and treats you so well and checks like all of these other boxes on your list, but he happens to have children? Like, are you going to write that guy off?
We all have our original visions about how things are supposed to go. And the problem is they end up boxing us in. This is 15, 17 years ago. I'm on Match.com. My wife is on Match.com. We don't meet on Match.com because she's not looking for a Jewish guy. I'm not looking for a woman 3 years older. If I want to have 2 kids and I'm 34 and she's 37, I wasn't looking for 37. We met at a party in real life, right? And so I'm an advocate of online dating because it's a huge tool that we need to use. But if we use it in ways that narrow the dating pool and instead of expand the dating pool, my wife and I would have passed each other up online. And I use that as a teachable moment to say there's a lot of people that, based on these arbitrary criteria that you've created, the math doesn't work. If you go in looking for the male version of you, but taller, richer, smart, right? By the very nature of that search, you're going to end up with 0.001% of men. And then women go on and say, everybody online sucks. There's no one.
I hear that all the time, which, by the way, has not been my experience.
and certainly the women I work with haven't found that's their experience either. Because I'm not encouraging you to go out with losers. I'm not encouraging you to go out with slackers or liars or players. I'm saying that at age 40, 75% of guys have had kids.
Right.
Right. So to say I want one of the 25%, okay, well, that just narrows the dating search, the percentage of men at that age who don't have kids. Right. And so we end up restricting it. The older you get, the fewer options you have to be able to pick and choose like that. And perhaps your choices change over time.
And I think that's really important to actually talk about, is that like you're allowed to change your preferences. You're allowed to change your mind, especially with like a life experience. You go out and you date a couple of people and you're like, oh, you know what? I tried that. That doesn't really work for me. Like, actually, you know what? That's not as important as I thought it was. Like, I reserve the right to change. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm 36 years old. I have 3 kids. Like I'm probably going to meet more people that have children than not at this stage of my life.
And those men, for what it's worth, are going to understand you a lot better. If I'm giving unsolicited advice, it's if you're a single mom, you're probably better off dating a single dad, even though there's a different set of complications. He's the guy who's going to get the fact that the kids come first.
Absolutely. So once we get to a point where we as women, I mean, like we are dating, right? We women have found ourselves dating someone, maybe a couple different people. How do we know like when we're wasting time with a guy?
That is like the salient question. And the answer, I'll give it away because I don't suppose everybody's going to be able to get there. But the short version of the answer is it has everything to do with listening to your feelings. And one of the things that I find really surprising is that women are supposed to be the more sensitive, intuitive sex, and yet they're more likely to ignore their feelings than men.
Totally.
They'll feel something and they'll blame themselves for why they feel that way, instead of saying something's off in this dynamic that I have with my boyfriend. Something's off with this dynamic I have with my husband. And they'll do all these mental gymnastics to figure out how to fix it or how to blame themselves. And they'll suffer through it like a frog boiling in water. instead of thinking, a bad relationship makes me feel anxious.
Yeah.
A consistent low level of anxiety. Where is this going? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I talk to him? If I talk to him, is he going to get angry at me? And then someone says, so how's your relationship? It's great. We're really happy. And then decades go by. I got women in their 70s who are working with me. We're in 35-year marriages where when I ask them, when did you know something was off? Where you didn't feel safe, heard, and understood in your relationship? And they'll say, 6 months? And they spent 35 years. And that's what I mean by women not listening to their own feelings.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally get that. And even like in my newfound like singledom, right? Like my singlehood, whatever you want to call it. Like I've met lovely individuals and it's fun. Like it's an interesting experience to go out there and be back in like the dating pool. A lot of people like feel really negatively towards dating, I think. And I don't. I'm like very excited by the idea of it. Through all the work that I've done on myself, right? Of like ignoring my own intuition for so long. I remember going out back into this dating pool and remember feeling, okay, this is a great person. But something doesn't sit right with me. I'm going to ignore that. And later I found out like something, without giving too much away, like there was like an argument that happened and I was like, you know what? I knew this. I already knew this. I knew this. I had like the insight. I can't explain it. I had a feeling. I just knew it from like a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatever. And I'm like, why didn't you just listen to yourself? And it was like a reminder to like really, really trust my intuition. Like, why are women just ignoring these things? Why are we doing that?
That gets into a much deeper conversation than perhaps we're going to be able to tackle here in this amount of time about what society tells women they should put up with.
Yeah, right.
And so, again, that's sort of a part of coaching is I'll work with women and I'll have, 30 women on Zoom. We had a theme. There was like 3 straight women who were telling me about guys that they were seeing who gave off some vibe, emotionally unavailable, and they were all inclined to look past it and give him another shot. And I was like, nope, this is exactly when we get off the bus.
Yeah, get off the bus.
Right now, you just told me it didn't feel good, and you're saying, so what should I do on the next date? What should I say to him? I was like, you don't say anything. You say bye. Right? So it becomes a lot easier. My central metaphor for my Love You course is women are the CEOs and men are the interns. And if we just keep cycling through resumes and we experience enough men, the feeling of, this seems like a good guy. I could relax. I could let down my guard again. The feeling of ease. Again, I love the word ease. That feeling is what takes over, and all the anxiety, you shouldn't have any of those issues.
Yeah. And the game playing.
Game playing always strikes me as some guy twirling his mustache. How could I hurt her? How could I destroy her? And guys don't do that. They're basically just sort of self-interested and your collateral damage, right?
Wow.
Rather than he's malicious. He's a love bomber. He's a narcissist. And most of the time, he's just a regular guy who doesn't know what he's attracted to, doesn't know what's good for him, doesn't know if he's available, doesn't want to be alone, is afraid to be tied down. It's all the confusion, and you're the recipient of that confusion.
Okay, so where then do women fit into when they start to convince a man? Like, oh, no. Like, let me convince you to love me.
Right, and so that's the opposite of what we call CEO energy.
Yeah.
You're never trying to convince a guy. You don't see Bill Gates running down the street trying to get an intern from the parking lot to come into Microsoft headquarters.
Right.
You sit back behind your desk, you receive people, they show you what they got. You say, yes, there'll be a second date. No, there won't be a second date. The stakes are really low. When someone says, I'm enjoying dating, that's what I'm receiving. I'm sitting here, guys are treating me well, I'm assessing them. No one's hit the jackpot yet. No one's been in the right place exactly, but I'm sure enjoying having these interns show me why they should work at my company.
Absolutely.
But I think if we listen more to our emotions and pay more attention to how you feel and how he treats you, that becomes our new checklist.
Yeah.
So instead of 6 feet tall, self-made millionaire, black diamond skier, it gets replaced, which doesn't mean those things don't exist. But the first list that we're fulfilling is character, kindness, consistency, communication, commitment. Maybe we could add the word connection because I think that's important too. And that is the baseline of a good relationship, whether he's 5'2" or 6'1".
That's right.
Or makes 50 grand or makes 500 grand. If you're missing any of those things, your relationship will suffer. So let's make sure that the guy you're seeing gives you those things, and then let's build on top of it.
I love this conversation so much.
All right, guys, let's take a quick break so I can thank our sponsor, Sana Skin Studio, with their OG location in Wynwood and their additional locations in Fort Lauderdale and Coconut Grove. Okay, so the best way I can describe Sana is that it feels like coming home. Unlike traditional facials, Sana's facials are rooted in education, and I love this so much. Every experience I have had at Sana has been a chance for me to learn more about my skin and its needs. I love that the facials are effective while also being accessible enough to be a monthly ritual rather than a yearly splurge. This is why the Sana membership is so great. I'm honored to be able to provide our audience with a promo code. Use the code TheNoGlow for $25 off of your first facial when booking at sanaskinstudio.com and additional incentives if you book a membership. I have absolutely loved my skin healing journey with Sana Skin Studio.
I want to ask you about compatibility and why you think it has nothing to do with like similarities and common interests, because like I have sort of found myself in a position where I'm like, oh, I don't have anything in common with this guy.
I think everybody's had an experience like this where there's a thing you think, there's a thing you feel, and then you read something that validates the thing you already thought and felt, and you're like, I knew I was right.
Yeah.
So I've been on this compatibility thing for a long time, right? It's something that I figured out with my wife. I'm East Coast, Jewish, liberal, Ivy League type. My wife comes from, right-wing, military, divorced, alcoholic, right? Our backgrounds could not be more different.
Yeah.
We are magic together. It has everything to do with what we talked about. How does the couple get along? Instead of thinking these things work because we're similar, we both went to East Coast colleges. And so the science caught up with that. Last summer, Northwestern did a study that talked about all the things that people find attractive that bring people together. The stuff we're talking about has a 0% correlation with long-term marital happiness. That is not a predictor of your marital happiness. That's just the attraction, which is similarity. So we're attracted to what's similar. It's familiar to us.
Sure.
I understand that person. They also went to summer camp here. They also are children of divorce. So it feels like a connection because it's similar. But if that person is missing your sense of humor, doesn't matter if you're similar. If that person can't hold down a job, doesn't matter if they're similar. So we let similarity become compatibility. And it's not really compatibility. Compatibility is, how easy is it?
I love this. I love coming back to the ease factor.
Every woman listening to this could think of a guy from your past where it was so good on paper. We were so compatible is the story. No, you were incompatible. Why? You broke up. Compatibility is this thing working? Is it durable?
Yeah.
Is the car moving? If your car is stalled, but it looks great, it's not a good car.
That's right. Amen. Amen to that. So why should we always assume that the answer is yes with men?
That requires a little bit of context. A lot of my clients who've had bad experiences with men, hard-won bad experiences, are going to be cynical, jaded, insecure, have abandonment issues about, he's going to date me and he's going to move on to someone else. He's going to marry the next person. And this becomes a narrative in our life. And then you're operating from a place of weakness, you're operating from a place of scarcity, and you automatically become the intern instead of the CEO. Where you're like, oh my God, he's so impressive, he's so cute, I hope he likes me. And then you carry yourself with that energy. Oh my God, I hope he likes me, I hope he texts me, I hope he calls me, I hope he finds me.
Do I like you? I'm like, do I like you?
Right. That's where we want to be. The terminology that we use in Love You, we say, assume the answer is yes. Assume he likes you, assume he's attracted to you, assume he wants to sleep with you, assume he wants to date you, assume he wants to marry you, assume that your intern wants this goddamn job.
Yeah.
And your job is to figure out if he's worthy. Now, do you like him? Can you see yourself with him in the future? Can you let down your guard? Can you be yourself? Do you have to censor yourself? Do you have to walk on eggshells?
Oh my gosh.
Now, that's a different conversation that we're having.
Right.
And you might discover, oh, I really like him because he's cute and smart and funny and rich. But the entire time I was on the date, I was nervous.
Yeah.
Like he felt kind of like icky, but I still want him to ask me out again. No, you don't want him to ask. Like, you don't. You just dodged a bullet.
Yeah, girl. Like I'm telling my old self, I'm telling other women out there, I'm like, yeah, girl, you dodged a bullet.
And so that's my point is I'm just a guy, right? I'm a guy who listens to women, and I've heard some version of this story thousands of times to the point that we could package it in a narrative and say, all right, how do we reverse engineer this? This is where you've always gone, emotionally unavailable, successful, critical guy. And what you need to go to is on a different path. And that means making different choices in early phase dating. Because if you just grab the next cute rich guy who comes along, and right, it's like getting on a bus without seeing whether the bus is going to Chicago or Los Angeles. So I just got on the bus, and the next thing I know, 2 years later, I was in another relationship with a rich, emotionally unavailable man.
I hear a lot about like women complaining about like how they, like where do you even find men? Where are they?
Right, and when you treat it like that exercise, where are they? Like you're a truffle pig, and you gotta try to sniff them out. I don't think that is accurate, nor is it effective, because it's treating men as if they're scarce. And if men are scarce, then you're going to have to hold on to it and grab it and treat it like you're holding the steering wheel so tightly.
Yeah.
And that's not the flow state that we want to be in.
No, it's not.
Men are abundant.
They're literally everywhere.
Let's just say 90% of them are worthless in terms of being a good husband. So let's just say that your feelings that there's a lot of not so good guys out there are accurate. 90% of them, lop them off. So now what are we dealing with? 10% of men who are kind, relationship-oriented, able to form intimate attachments, know how to treat a woman, right? Now you just have to find one of them.
Yeah.
If we're dealing with not 100% of men, but 10% of men are marriage material, and they're everywhere. It's not where are they hiding? They are indeed everywhere. They're in line, at Whole Foods, and they are at the gym, and they are at the golf club, and they work in the corner office, and they are everywhere online, and they're just mixed in with the other shitheads. If you have a pretty good idea of filtering, you don't have to let the 90% get you down. And that's what I'm seeing is women are no, intellectually what I'm saying is true, but they're so bothered by the presence of the 90% that they think it ruins everybody else. And I'm like, no, stay focused on the 10%.
Right. No, that makes me sad. Like, I when I think about it, I get sad. But, it's funny because I have a good friend who literally, like, she was like, he has to be this tall. He has to make this much money. He has to have no kids. He has to have not been married. Right. And I'm thinking, you've been married. You've been this. Like, you're not physically like whatever, like any like man's like checkbox. I'm just like, I might not be. I remember telling her, hey, like maybe get rid of that. Like, what if he's not like doesn't have this box, or what if he doesn't have this income, or what if he has been married, or whatever. And honest to God, it's COVID. She meets this white, short, nerdy dude in line at the supermarket.
Yep.
They're married and they're so happy.
Love that.
I love that.
And that's the peril of online dating. Online dating is a great medium because everybody's there. But because you have so many choices, we say, well, I got to narrow the choices. And then we narrow it to our ideal preferences, and we miss out on the margins, right? You may prefer black, but could you fall in love with a white guy? Yeah. You might prefer X, but are you open to Y? And the answer is usually yes. We're not boxed in. So we tend to put in our ideal preferences, and we forget all the people who fall outside, and we forget that we're going to fall outside other people's preferences. And that's the thing that you were hinting at is when I do this bit, people don't always receive it well. So this guy's mansplaining to me, right? How I should compromise. What does he have to compromise on? And the answer is always considerable. Whatever you're compromising on, he's compromising on just as many things. You're just not spending any time thinking about the things he has to compromise on, right? And so that's the hard part, is if you have an imaginary checklist, you'd be like, I wish he was a little taller. I wish he was a little richer. I wish he was a little more extroverted. I wish he could do the exact same thing to you. He won't, because he's your boyfriend. But he could do the exact same thing to you because you're a human being and we're all flawed. And we couldn't possibly be anybody's perfect ideal.
Exactly.
Right? But marriages are not built on ideals. If you are fortunate enough to know any happily married couples and you ask them individually or even together, what did you compromise on to be with Jeff? What did you compromise to be with Nancy? They can tell you. We compromise on our jobs. We compromise on our homes. We compromise on our friends and our family.
Yeah.
That are not ideal. We make the best of it. This is one thing where the word compromise is wrong. So I want to bring back compromise as a good thing. No one's asking you to settle. You settle your way into misery. You compromise your way into happiness.
Love that.
Otherwise, you'd be homeless and jobless because you compromise on both of those.
Exactly. Okay, Evan, so I want to wrap up by talking about sex a little bit and how men and women are so very different or not when it comes to sex. So, one of the things that I was reading up on with you is that your theory is that men look for sex and find love. And I want to know what that means for single women.
It means something that is pretty profound and important. And nothing I say is about how I want the world to be, because I'm not powerful enough to create the world. I observe the world as it is.
Sure.
What is one thing you might have noticed about men? They could sleep with you and never call you again, and it's not a big deal. He doesn't have to be attracted to you. He doesn't have to like you. He doesn't have to be emotionally available. He doesn't have to want a future. For men, in general, sex is more of a physical act. And from that physical act, oh, she's also really cool. I loved hanging out with her and talking to her. Plan A was to sleep with her. Plan B was, I didn't want her to leave the next day. That was really interesting. I'm going to see her again. So guys are always pursuing getting laid, short-term goal, right? It's not that the long-term goal is irrelevant, but no guy has walked up to a woman at a bar because she looks like she'd be a good mother to his children. So we can never remove that piece of it. We don't have to like it.
Right.
But women often don't operate this way. Yes, women could have sex without commitment and one-night stands and enjoy it. But for the most part, they don't enjoy it as much as men. All studies bear that out, that women will often catch feelings for the guy they're sleeping with or hope that it turns into a relationship. Maybe if I just sleep with him for long enough and I'm the best he's ever had in bed, maybe he'll come to love me. And you got the order wrong.
Yeah. Talk about that, though. Like, you got the order wrong.
If indeed men look for sex and find love, and you don't like the feeling of sleeping with a guy who is still actively on Tinder, or falling for a guy who has no desire for a relationship right now and hoping you could procure one, right? If you just sleep with him for 6 months and he changes his mind and you're not the girlfriend and you're not the future wife, you're just the one he's seeing, you always put yourself in that intern position. There's no power in it. You're just waiting to be chosen.
Oh my gosh. Like, can we put waiting to be chosen sucks.
Right. So stop fucking doing that. So how do we stop doing that? Well, don't sleep with any guy who's not your boyfriend. Right there, we reverse the order and people are like, what? You could do that? Yeah, you could do that. What happens? You date someone, you go online, and this, I teach this because it's a surprisingly revolutionary concept. You meet someone online, you swipe, you text, you talk on the phone, you meet, you have a great first date, he follows up, you see him again later that week, you make out at the end of the night. Now what are you doing? You're dating. Now you may be talking to other guys, he may be talking to other women. What should you not be doing? Sleeping with him because it feels good. Because if you sleep with him, A, you got it too quickly, he doesn't value it as much. All right, B, he doesn't have to work for it. All right, C, it changes the dynamic. Now you're waiting to be chosen. Instead of interviewing a bunch of interns and seeing who wants the long-term job the most.
Yeah.
So right now, I would like everybody who's listening to consider the idea of dating like a man, to have a harem of guys that you're dating online, and all of them inching forward and demonstrating to you in follow through, not how he acts on the date, but how he acts after the date. Is this guy serious about getting to know me, or is he just trying to get laid? And you can't tell at the beginning, which is another reason not to sleep with someone. You can't tell which guy it is.
Yeah.
And he's not going to tell you. By the way,
not gonna tell you.
I'm just here to use you. Just letting you know.
Just letting you know.
I'll wait you out for about 5 dates, but if you don't put up by then, I'm out.
You're right.
Said no man ever. If you date a guy like you're in high school and you take him around the bases slowly and he invites you over at 11 o'clock with a bottle of wine, you're like, sorry, that's for boyfriends only. I'll see you at farmer's market tomorrow. You control the pace. If a guy is interested in sex and he continues to pursue you when he's not getting sex, you get to know each other platonically. By 5-6 weeks, you have so much more information than if you slept with him on the third date.
Yeah.
So just by letting men audition to be your boyfriend for 5 or 6 weeks without sleeping with them.
Audition to be your boyfriend. They need to audition.
Right. So he's auditioning to be your boyfriend over, again, it's an arbitrary, it's not about the number of dates, about exactly the number of weeks. But I generally say within 4 to 6 weeks, you and he should know, let's give this thing a shot. Let's take our profiles down. Let's become a couple. Let's sleep together. And that all happens simultaneously. If you sleep with people before he's your boyfriend, then you're always in the waiting position and then powerless position. And if you're fine with that, there's no moral judgment against sleeping with a guy.
Oh, do you? Do you, bro?
This is just for practical. If you don't like the dynamic of sleeping with someone and then checking your phone obsessively, don't sleep with anybody until he's declared. It's just you. And now you don't have to be obsessed. Now you don't have to worry. Now you got yourself a boyfriend. We call it sexclusivity. Don't sleep with anybody who's not your boyfriend.
I love that. And it was so I'm going to close on this because this is something that my girlfriends and I are talking about too. If he's not having a conversation with me about exclusivity and I want to make you my girlfriend and I want to take you off the market, may the best man win. You are not the only guy in my texts.
Right. And
be
more
the best man
importantly,
win until we have a conversation that we want to take me off the market. Because until that conversation happens, it's fair game. But homeboys.
And he should be leading that conversation.
Exactly. And that's the part 2 of what my girlfriends and I are talking about.
There's 3 phases. He's going to do it right away. And we've all done, I've been that guy. Go on one date. Oh my God, you're the one. And it's a little too much too soon, but it's genuine teenage excitement.
Yeah.
Right. But he's got to slow his roll a little bit. There's the guy who declares, I want you to be my girlfriend, date 1, date 2. No pretense of being cool, wearing his heart on his sleeve. There's the guy who dates the way we're talking about, which is my ideal way of dating it. The 4 to 6 weeks, mature, kick the tires, keep our options open, get closer and closer. And then there's a sort of on-ramp. And if you've gone out with a guy twice a week for 5 weeks, you could probably be in a relationship and feel comfortable giving that guy a shot.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one, which is the most common one and the least effective one, which is sleeping with someone you barely know for an indefinite amount of time and hoping he initiates the conversation that you want him to initiate and being afraid to even raise your hand and say, where is this going? And so, if you never do that again, that's the best way to avoid that fate. No
that feeling,
value judgment against
it. It's not a good feeling. It's just not a good feeling.
Right. It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
And B, any guy who wants to be your boyfriend is going to do that sometime in the first couple months. If he hasn't offered to step up to the plate in that time, cut him off. Don't negotiate with him. Don't try to convince him. Cut him off. You're firing the intern. Clearly, you don't want this job that bad, intern.
No, that's okay. And that's okay.
That's all right. We want people who want to be in this company.
Cup of tea. That's okay.
Right.
You don't want this job? Cool.
Right.
I don't want somebody who doesn't want the job.
Right. But too many women do.
No. I mean, yes, I agree with you. I'm saying,
right, no, I know, I get it. There's the way
I don't want somebody who doesn't want to be here. You don't want to be here. Bye. Go.
There's the way things are and there's the way things should be. And so we need to try to get them more aligned to how they should be. You do not want a guy. Last night, I had a woman crying on the phone because the guy she was seeing for 5 months flipped out that he saw a text from her ex-boyfriend on her phone and then said he had too much going on in his life and he had nothing to give to the relationship right now. And she's devastated. And I was like, you just dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
You found out that you're with a jealous guy who's not properly motivated to make an effort for you, doesn't prioritize you enough, and you found out in 5 months instead of 1 year or 2 years.
Exactly.
Right. So she's devastated what she lost. I was like, no. You gained the freedom to find a better man who's more motivated. Motivation is everything. There's lots of guys who are, once again, fine on paper. How bad does he want to give you the life that you told me that you wanted?
Yeah.
And if he's not striving towards that, then there will be a guy who will give that to you. You can't be with that guy if some other guy is taking up his space. There's like one parking spot. And if you're seeing some dead end guy, no one else can get into that parking spot.
Evan, I'm so glad we had this conversation. I feel like super empowered leaving this conversation. I feel like all of our listeners are going to feel super empowered leaving this conversation. Where can people check you out? Because I feel like, if anybody is considering a dating coach, I think this is a great time. Like in womanhood in general, I think that we're starting to like wake the fuck up. And I think it's like a great time to invest in something like this. So tell us where people can find you, where they can sign up for your courses.
I'm everywhere. I'm ubiquitous. I'm on every social media, Real Evan Marc Katz on Instagram, Real Evan Marc Katz on TikTok. Best place to find me is on my website. And I made a gift for your listeners, Nikki. If you go to Evan Marc Katz, EvanMarckKatz.com/Nikki, they will get a special report, 7 massive mistakes you're making in dating. Big aha moments. Oh my God, I didn't know that was a mistake. 7 of them will be delivered to your inbox, and I will send you free dating and relationship advice. And if you're listening to this and you're highly motivated and want to do something now, as I said, I give a lot of free stuff away. If you feel compelled, then we could talk about love you and working together, but I'd love to give you free advice.
Love that so much. Thank you so much, Evan. This is amazing. And thank you for the generous gift. I hope everybody goes to check out the website. I'll put that in the show notes for everybody so that you can get your 7 mistakes that you're doing in dating. And be sure to check out Evan Marc Katz. I mean, this has been an awesome conversation. There's so much more where that came from. Be sure to check him out. Thank you so much, Evan.
This podcast was brought to you by Sana Skin Studio. Be sure to use my code, TheNoGlow, for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. More than a skin studio, Sana is a movement towards healthier skin and self-love. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.